Fragments of silicon. Use caution when inserting into a computer.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon. I'm your host, Adam. Joining me as always are Petty and Galax. Right,
Yep.
Or I guess you're the Gulax this week.
I've been debating. So a lot of my friends change their handles for Halloween, and I usually don't. But that would be the easy one.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what pun Petty would turn into for the frightful season, but
Petty Fang.
There you go.
Boo this man.
Dr. Guillotine, there's nothing better for Halloween with a handle like that, am I right?
No, yeah, you don't have to change anything.
Just kidding.
Yeah.
That's right.
Anyway, let's get to the news, the personal news such as it is. Petty, why don't you start us off this week?
Overall quiet week, though I think I may have a kidney stone, so that's fun.
This is what qualifies for a quiet week Shea Petty fan audience.
Yeah.
But yeah, other than that, therapy's been going. I believe I see the doctor in like 2 weeks. See where we're going from there. No, 3, but yeah. Time is relevant sometimes, maybe. I don't know, man. And, yeah, outside of that, been real quiet.
Hey, you come to my facility at Dr. Guillotine. I know how to get out of kidney stone. Little punch to the kidneys. We get that sucker right out.
I think I'm good.
All right. Galax? Alex?
Did he mute himself?
I did. No, pretty much in a holding pattern here. Nothing special going on. It's been very rainy, but that's not surprising. Looking forward to Halloween, although I don't know if I'm doing anything special for it, but it's always just a nice feeling. Video game wise, Sunday Macross with Mac has been going well, and we're still debating what game we're doing after this. I've heard some things about Langrisser and also some things about some other things. Otherwise, been playing Splatoon 3, and there's a few things coming out soon, so we'll see how much time I have to dedicate to those when they come out. Bayonetta 3 is pretty soon, and then Pokemon games are not that long after that. I think that's all we got.
All right, I guess it's my go. Let's see. Well, the good news is I got my stitches removed the other day from my finger. If you recall previously, I cut it pretty precipitously. And I got it double checked today. So that's healing along fine. Bought some new pants today. Size 34s, which is not a size I've been for a while. Long while. But, it's like my diet has been going really well. Like, I'm under 200, I'm about or under 200 pounds, depending on the scale. Like, sometimes the same scale. Like, it was 199 today, it was 199 yesterday. The point is, I'm in that general vicinity. So, things are going there. Let's see. I'm finally seeing my dietitian tomorrow. Like things I want to find out are, foods for the holidays and a good target weight, because that's something my primary care doctor never locked in. It's just like, you need to lose weight.
It's always tricky to do that because in America particularly, but like everywhere, a lot of doctors are overly fixated on weight loss as the solution to everything, and most people have a weight that they cannot go down below without massive effort.
Yeah, or
But yeah.
technically my ideal weight back when I was down at that size, people thought I was anorexic because the way my frame is built.
Plus, they friggin' changed the definition of obese, like what?
3 different times.
A decade ago or so.
Yeah.
To make it much lower, so.
Yeah, I mean, I'm no longer in the obese BMI, but BMI has always been fairly ridiculous.
Yeah. Because it only takes 2 things, and it doesn't take into account, people's histories and, tendencies.
Yeah. Anyway, and let's see. Next week, I'm going to see I'm finally going to see the dentist. Then in 3, week after that, I get my new set of labs. And then my next visit to my primary care doctor. Although I may end up talking to him earlier to talk about peripheral neuropathy. Don't know yet. It's something I've been dealing with for a year now. It's a subset of diabetes. But it's turns out I have it. Got that diagnosed a few weeks ago, but I've been dealing with the pain for a year. But it's been mild enough where I don't need any ointments or early prescription ointments or prescription medication. At least not now. Really, the goal is just getting the blood sugar under control. Thankfully I have Icy Hot. I have my Wiseman cream, all that stuff to help. So my feet don't seem to like socks for too long. They start getting throbby. Anyway, so on the non-medical front, dealing with some family issues, let's say. Not going to get into that on the air, but they are, let's just say, things that are threatening the holidays. And I'll say no more about it. Hopefully things cool off by the time, Thanksgiving comes along and so on and so forth. But we'll see. Anyway, so that's all my news that's fit to print. So, merely we shall roll along to the interview portion of the broadcast. And joining us this week is one Dr. Guillotine, or Marcus Maximus Mera of Cygnus Software.
Cygnus Entertainment, because we're here to entertain you.
Oh, is it entertainment?
Yeah, Cygnus Entertainment.
Oh.
Nice meeting you all, and thank you for having me on the show.
No problem. It's good to have you. Right. So how we like to get started, we like to get to know the people or person behind the games, the studio, and what have you. And we do this by asking this particular question. What got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
Well, I've been playing video games back from my very first system was an Odyssey 2. And then the Commodore 64. So I've been playing games for a long time. And then I kind of paused for a while, a long while actually, in the mid 90s, kind of like the peak of I guess a retro game history. Everybody loves the 90s. You had this SNES, and you had those DOS games, and you had Phantasmagoria, and you had Doom, and all those other games. And so I got a computer again like around 99, but I used it mainly for graphic design, like for Illustrator and Photoshop. I studied fashion at Parsons and at FIT. I wanted to be a fashion designer. And then I ended up in the jewelry industry selling diamonds. And from that point on, I learned 3D software around 2003, I'm going to say. I started learning 3D modeling, and I was using a software called Rhino to make all my jewelry components. And through that, I had hired a friend of mine, Jean Andre, and I taught. We learned Rhino together. And after about 2 years, he left and he went into a game studio and started studying video game design because that was his passion. So he would come back and he would show me new techniques like using ZBrush and using Maya and using like the software packages that you need to use to make game assets. But I was still in jewelry, and so basically, the only games I played during that time was like Oblivion. I loved the Skyrim and Oblivion, the Elder Scrolls. I love like role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons and things like that. So I really was drawn to that kind of medieval, magical fantasy kind of stuff. And then I started playing like Fallout and Fallout 3. And some of the, and I go back and start playing some retro games here and there. But the bottom line, what happened was I was making jewelry for like Harry Winston and Van Cleef, two like prestigious jewelry companies. They would they were my clients. So I had a factory in Manhattan. I had this beautiful factory in Manhattan. Had about 7 guys working for me. Making the pieces, and we would get orders from all these like clients, celebrity clients, jiu-jitsu martial artists, some of the best fighters in the world. I got to collaborate with a very famous tattoo artist named Paul Booth, and we did a very spooky, horror-inspired jewelry line that was like, sold really well. It did really well, and then I got divorced. And when I got divorced, I had to move out of the city, and I moved back to my parents' house. I'm back in my parents' house, and I'm in my old room. And I start thinking about, what I was like when I was a kid. And one of the first things I thought about was like the Commodore 64. And so whenever I was bored, I'd go on YouTube and watch like the 8-Bit Guy and Metal Jesus Rocks and Game Grumps and all these different stuff, and like these retro stuff. And I started to get into Facebook groups like Big Box PC Gaming Group.
Oh, yeah.
So I got into those groups, and then I decided to go buy a Commodore 64. I go on Facebook Marketplace one day, and I go and I grab I see a listing for a Commodore. I go grab it. I come back, and the power supply doesn't work. So I look for another lot. And I buy another one, and before that, I'm buying another one, and before you know it, if you look behind me, I got probably like 1,000 games right now, and everything from Zach McCracken to Big Box to Nintendo stuff, and just like all across the board and systems. And I started going to like groups like I go to Amiga Bill's Amiga group. I've been belonging to his group for a while, and Amiga Bill is a very famous videographer. Worked with Ron Howard and a bunch of other guys, and so I got to meet him. And then I would go to like these I started looking up, like, is there any, like, I remember like back in the day they used to have these like trade fairs or shows or swap meets with, you'd go and there'd be like people selling games and selling computers. And so I found out that not far from me is actually a computer museum called the Vintage Computer Federation East. and it's in Wall Township. It's in a military base that they have a beautiful display of retro computers, like pretty much anything you can think of. So how did I get into gaming? Well, I was collecting, and one day I saw a listing for King's Quest, and I look at it. It's the original King's Quest in the plastic case, the PC Junior version. And there was a bunch of other stuff that came with it. So I messaged the lady. I go, "Hi, is this available?" And she's like, "Why, yes, it is." I go, "How much would you like?" And she goes, "How much do you offer for it?" I go, "I'll give you $80. And she's like, "Nah, that's too cheap. Like, I got like 5 more boxes of this stuff." And I'm like, "All right, well, what do you want for it?" And then she wouldn't reply. And I kept asking, no reply. So I have a second account. So I switched to my second Facebook account. I'm like, "Hey, is this available?" And she's like, "Yes, it is." I go, "Well, how much do you want for it?" She goes, "What do you offer?" And I go, $200. Oh, she goes, "Oh, okay. Yeah, that works for me." And then she gave me her address to go pick it up. So I decided to go right away. I was like, "I'm coming now. I'm going to come right now for it." She gives me the address. It was like 250 miles away.
That is pretty far to go all of at once.
I go, "What the hell? 250 miles." For some reason, again, if I didn't go, I wouldn't be here today doing what I'm doing. I went. I drove the 250 miles. I get all the way over there, however many hours it took me to get there. I get over there. And I get out of the car, and she sees me, and she's like, "Hey, aren't you the guy from the other Facebook account?" I'm like, "Don't worry about it. I really want it. I got my money." I come over, and I give her the $200, thinking I'm getting all 5 boxes. She goes, No, that's only for the 1 box." I go, But I look in the box, and it had, a bunch of PC Junior stuff, and it had the King's Quest, and I'm like, that's right. I'm fine with the 1 box. I really just needed this King's Quest because I knew the value of it. I knew it's worth quite a bit of money. So I get all the way home, and I lay out all the games and all the stuff that I got, and I take a picture, and I post it into that PC Big Box group. All of a sudden, this pretty notorious game collector messages me, and I had spoken to him periodically here and there. But this time he's like, "Don't tell anybody. You have something I really want." And it was in a IBM sleeve, and it was called Adventures in Serenia. Do you guys know what that is?
Doesn't ring a bell to me.
Have you ever heard of the game Wizard and Princess?
Maybe.
This is the second game that Roberta Williams. Do you know who Roberta Williams is?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure. It's the second game she ever made. It's called Wizard and Princess, and Adventures in Serenia was the IBM. For some reason, wanted to change the name, and it's like one of the first games published on the IBM. Yeah. So so he wanted it, and I didn't want to give it to him. So I knew I had something cool, and I had something rare, and so I went to my weekly, monthly Amiga group, the one I was telling you about, Amiga Bill. So I'm in the group, and I'm sitting, and Bill is talking about. He goes, "Hey, guys, I'm going to be giving a presentation at the Vintage Computer Federation Festival. It's in 2 weeks. So, you guys should come check me out, blah, 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 blah." And this is, by the way, during the pandemic, so we were doing a virtual version of it. In my head, I thought, wow, that's a good idea. And so I next day, I contacted the Federation, and I said, "Hey, Jeff." And he's the vice president. And, I met him a couple times because I would go fix computers over there and, kill some time over there because I really liked it. So I was like, "Hey, Jeff, I just found these 2 really rare games, the original King's Quest and Adventures in Serenia. And I thought, usually you do these festivals, you're always talking about the hardware. You always talk about the tech and the computers, but never really the software. And I figured maybe I can give a little history about these two games in the company Sierra Online. And he goes, "Hey, Marcus, that's a great idea. Oh, by the way, Ken Williams, the designer of the game, he's also presenting. Why don't we have you lead in?" Like, what? So I'm like, are you kidding me?
That's significantly more than just maybe we'll talk about it a little.
I was like, what? He goes, the designer of the game is presenting and we'll have you lead into him. I'm like, wow, that's all right. That just changes everything because, now I got to really know what the hell I'm talking about. So I start freaking out and I go back to that collector and I'm like, I'm really screwed here. I got to know the whole history of this game. I know some of it. It's like I can find stuff on the internet. He goes, well, I know Ken Williams. Why don't I introduce you to him? I'm like, what? You know Ken? He goes, yeah, I chat. He's my friend. I chat with him all the time. I said, sure. Yeah, I'll talk to him. Next thing you know, I get a message. Hey, I'm Ken Williams. And I'm like, whoa. Like, hi, big boss. I'm like, nice to meet you. And so he goes, I heard you're giving a presentation. I go, yeah, and I really want to make sure I do a good job. Maybe you can give me some background about Sierra Online and these two games and like some stuff that people don't know about so I can sound smart. And he goes, oh, well, I just wrote a book. Why don't I send you a copy? I'm like, what? You wrote a book about this exact subject? Well, perfect. Sure. So I get the book and I start reading it. And I had some personal family stuff that literally was like 2 days before the show, before I was supposed to present that. So I almost missed presenting. I'm like literally telling them I don't know if I can make it. And they were like, we'll be really disappointed if you don't make it. So for whatever reason, I was able to like fight through that family stuff and showed up. I showed up for the presentation, but I didn't really have the time to prepare. I didn't get to really finish reading the book and didn't really get to. So I get there like 5 a.m. and I'm like sitting at the computer watching the Angry Video Game Nerd, watching like Pushing Up Roses and getting my notes together and because it was live and I had like one shot. Like there's no like redo, you know what I mean? You just do it. There's no like, and there's thousands of viewers, so you better not screw this up. And so went live. I stuttered a little bit, but overall, like I always am the harshest critic on myself. I'm like, I sucked. But a lot of people are like, no, you did a great job. It was a great presentation. Ken was like, you did better than I did. And I'm like, all right, cool. So yeah, I did well. And so that was like October of 2020 or something like that. And November 1st or something like that, like around now. And so about 2 years ago. And I finished reading the book approximately around the end of December. I finished reading the book. And I stayed in touch with Ken. Sometimes he would reply back to me, sometimes he wouldn't. But I said, hey, Ken, I just finished reading your book. And he's like, oh, what'd you think? I said, wouldn't it be great if you made a comeback like Steve Jobs did at Apple and take Sierra back to new heights? And he starts smiling and he's like, oh, I'm working on something. I go, well, it just so happens, you may not know this, but I'm an artist and I work in 3D. I do with my jewelry. I'm a really amazing sculptor. I'll have no problem making any asses for you, any help. I got, free time, whatever you want to do. And he's like, oh, I didn't know you're an artist. I'll be in touch in a few days. A couple days later, he's like, hey, Marcus, what are you up to? I go, anything you want, big boss. And it's been like 2 years. And here we are on the verge of launching this game. We have it started off just Ken and I working for 6 months secretly, like it was called The Secret, if you remember.
Yes.
Yeah, so for 6 months I had to keep quiet. Can you imagine? For 6 months I couldn't tell anybody I'm working with the founders of Sierra Online. and I have to like, because he was like, I'm not sure if I really want to finish this. I may pull the rug on it. I might do this under a pseudonym. I said, okay, that's fine. I'm just very happy to be working with like such incredible people. I've played their games when in the 80s and 90s, and I knew who they were. I didn't know all the details, but I basically knew who they were. And I'm working with two of the most important video game designers in the world. And here I am trying to stay quiet. So I started to unfollow people on Facebook. People message, "Why are you unfollowing me?" Because I'm like, I'm going to talk. I can't tell you things, and I got to disappear. I had to stop going to the Amiga groups as often as I did, those meetups. I unfollowed like that PC big box collectors group because I just unfollowed that group and just had to like become a hermit. And like, I gained 20 pounds. I would work day and night, I'm a very neat guy. So one day my friend comes over and he's like, "What the hell happened to your room?" And I got like Dungeons and Dragons books and like fantasy books, like stacked up papers everywhere, things on the wall, like like I'm like trying to figure out this game because I was literally making the whole game by my not the coding side, but all the art, like all the visuals have to like think about taking this text adventure, this 50-year-old game, and how I'm going to make it so it's playable today, and it's it started off as we're going to do a 3D game. So it just started off as a 3D adventure game. So here I am trying to visualize this entire game by myself because Roberta did not want to really do the game. She did, but not really. Like she was more concentrated on her book. So it was really just Ken and I for those first 6 months. And a lot of it was really interesting because she would poke her head around. She kept on looking at like, my troll, or she'd look at the dwarf that I was doing, or, make comments here and there. And then one day Ken turns around and goes, "Look, you're either all in or you're not." It's like, it's hilarious, So, and I would just kind of like I'd send her emails, "Hey, what do you think of the troll like this?" And she's like, "Oh, it looks very trolly. Oh, but how about if you do it like this?" Or the dwarf, it needs to be more chubby and like, wobbly and, And so I knew that she was interested. Like she was definitely, I just knew it. Like I knew that she would come back. So after the 6 months, we built a prototype. Now, Ken and Roberta like to refer it as like finished graphics. It was never finished graphics. It was like literally 6 months, me never making a game in my life, trying to figure out how to optimize and, make graphics for a video game was totally different than making jewelry. But I mean, some of the basic stuff is pretty much there. So I did a really good job for the first time ever, making any kind of levels and things like that. There were some technical issues that I had, but nothing that couldn't have been fixed. Mm-hmm. So one day, Ken asks me, he goes, "Hey, Marcus, do you think kids are going to want to play this game?" And I go, as a 3D game, I think you'll have some kids playing the game. You'll definitely have the Sierra fans playing the game. But if you want to have if Sierra was here today making this game would 100% have a VR version. And at that moment, like I could see in his face, like a light bulb went on his head and he was like, "Oh, ooh." And I put out some, he's like, "Yeah, let's make it a VR game." So I put out some feelers and I found this programmer, Sydney Hamilton, who worked with Lori and Corey Cole. You know who those are?
Yeah, we've had them on the show.
Yeah. So Sydney Hamilton worked with them, and I brought her on board, and her and Ken took my graphics and made it into VR. And I had the Rift, the Oculus Rift, which was like a PC VR kind of system. So I was able to like have these super high polygon, like crazy textured mega scans, like those Quixel mega scans that you see in Unreal Engine. And I got it in Unity. working and looking amazing, like 3D flowers. And so I'm like walking around the flower in VR. I'm like, oh my God, look how pretty this is. You know, I couldn't believe, like, you know, can you imagine, like, you look at your art like in 2D on a screen, and one day you're inside your art, like you're literally inside the art that you made. That was an incredible feeling for me, and I really loved it. I still do. So that's how we went on the path of VR. But we're not a VR only game. We have a PC version. We're on the Switch. And one of the things I did was when Ken said after the 6 months and we had the prototype, he goes, "Go ahead, tell everybody that you're working with me on a game." So I'm all excited. I'm like, all right. So I go to Twitter. I'm like, hey, everybody. Hey, world. I'm Marcus, and I'm making a video game with Ken and Roberta Williams. Take a guess what the reaction was that I got.
Did they not believe you?
Like, you're full of crap. You're a liar. They're like, Ken and Roberta Williams is traveling the world on a yacht. They've been saying they'll never make a game again. Who are you? What is a jeweler doing working with? No, this is baloney. And then this guy, the Space Quest historian, messages Ken, and Ken writes him back, "No, Marcus is telling the truth. It's true." And then they all came back. "We're so sorry, Marcus. We apologize. Blah 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 blah." And I'm like, "Yeah, you better recognize." No, I'm just kidding. But it was funny. You know, I didn't expect that reaction. I thought everybody's going like, "Well, it's so cool." But anyway, so the announcement happens. I posted on LinkedIn, and one of these guys messaged me. He's like, "Hey, I'm Brian. Remember me? I taught you 3D modeling back in 2003." And I'm like, "Well, duh, Brian. Of course I remember you." He goes, "I just left Autodesk and just got a job at Unity. I just thought I'd let you know." I go, "Wait, hold the phone." I go, "We're using Unity. Why don't you go to I know you just got your job there, but go to your boss and tell him that, you know the guy working with Ken and Roberta Williams, and see if they have any interest in marketing with us, cross marketing." Before you know it, I'm in a meeting with like all the top people at Unity. There's like 10 or 12 people on the Zoom call. Ken is like blown away. Ken's like blown away. And I got this entire support team to help us. It went from Ken and I to like literally like 20 people helping us. And then Roberta would come in. She's like, "Oh, hey, hi everybody." And then they were like, "Hi, Roberta." And then again, it was like these kind of steps helping pull her out of retirement, pull her back into game design. And I like to think I was a major, I like to think I had a huge impact on that because, I definitely brought us Unity. I definitely brought a lot of these things, to the organization, and helped push this forward, and get this to the finish line. Pulling in talent, like I brought in Emily, who's one of the tech artists, and then she introduced me to Amber. I interviewed Amber, and I thought she was really good. And now she does all our environmental art. She's the lead artist. Just got to work with some people that I brought in. And then Ken and Roberta, they were able to find some really amazing, talented people. And now we have like 40 full-time employees today.
Wow.
Like 40 full-time employees. So
That's
it went
pretty
from
significant.
Yeah, I went from Ken and I to 40 people. So the game progressed, like, I would read the Reddit comments. "Oh, this game is going to suck because Marcus doesn't know what he's doing, blah, 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 blah." And if you watch my early interviews, I always said that there's no way that Roberta Williams is going to put her name on a game that sucks or has bad graphics. There's just no way. They there's just, it's not happening. So, say that? I'm sorry?
Like, right. And I suppose I actually do have a question here.
Go right ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Because we kind of maybe not glossed over it, but I'm wondering, why did they want to do a remake of Colossal Cave in the first place?
So at first, when I was talking to Ken, and the game that he wanted to make was an educational game.
Uh-huh.
I think that lasted one day. It was like, I want to do like this educational, like, game where people learn how to code. And I think he told Roberta that, that night. He's like, I'm gonna make a game. I'm still, and I want to do an educational game. And Roberta's like, okay. And I think like the next morning she woke up and was like, why don't you do a remake of Colossal Cave? The game that inspired us to, create Sierra. And he's like, oh, great idea. So the next day he comes to me. He's like, hey, Marcus, have you ever heard of Colossal Cave? And honestly, I got to be honest with you. I'm a pretty old guy, and I remember Zork and all these other text adventures. I didn't really remember Colossal Cave. I think that was even before my time. And I didn't really remember it.
I've heard that's about it. Like, it's that old.
It's old. But what happened was once I looked it up, then I remembered it, because things like Zizzy and Plu and these standing at the end of the road in front of a small brick building, these things I definitely remember and recognize. Even though I never played the original Colossal Cave back in the day. So that's how it was. Roberta just like had an epiphany, like after Ken was like, I want to do an educational game. She kind of laughed at him like, yeah, okay, good luck with that. Why not make a fun game? And Colossal Cave came to her mind. And I got to tell you, she's an amazing designer. What a wonderful, talented, like, genius. She is just a genius. Just the way she thinks and talks, and her attitude and her energy and her storytelling and her knowledge and her history. And man, if you make a mistake, she will catch you with it. And like, and she's really cool because like it's pretty much her way, always. It's pretty much her way, right? Like it's her game, it's her way. But she will listen to you. And if you make a really good point or argument or something to prove that this is the better way, she will side with it. She will side with it. Listen, Anyo, nem most én látom, én hallottam, én mindjárt, én most vagyok a rádió. Thank you. So that's the case. Like Roberta Williams is a genius. She's an amazing designer. I spent sometimes 5 hours straight talking design with her and the team, and we would have unbelievable meetings and long design sessions.
Right. And I suppose on that note, how faithful of a remake is this new version of Colossal Cave? Like, if you actually played the old version back in the day, are you going to recognize let's say the descriptions, but, in 3D, or is it something, a bit away from the old version?
So I've played the game, the original text game, and you can, by the way, play it on colossalcave3d.com. We have the original text adventure on the website for you to play. It's very faithful. There's some differences, but it's very minor. It's mainly like, how do you translate text into a 3D environmental world? Mm-hmm. You want to stay as faithful. So like if somebody had played the game 50 years ago and they're in the plover room, the description, like you want to make sure that like what they saw in their head is kind of like what you're representing. Like it should be like a universal artistic impression of those words.
Ideally, you don't want people going, but that's not what thing is supposed to be.
Right. And they're probably going to still have some of that. But what happened was when it was just me designing the game originally, very difficult to design by yourself. It's extremely hard. sometimes I wouldn't even understand the word, like what it meant, like a gully. Like, what does a gully look like? You know, like
And
how
how
do
is
you
it different than a ditch or a
just like
valley?
how big is a gully? How far do I have to go with it? You know, I made extreme gullies, then I made small gullies, and you know, I had the upper world was pretty big, and they were always complaining to me, Ken and Roberta, like to make it smaller, make it smaller. Um, you know, so that was really hard by myself. Um, I didn't get to work with Roberta at that time. I was just working with Ken, and Ken is not an artist. He's a wonderful programmer. He's a very great visionary, but honestly, he's got terrible taste in art. I'm sorry to say. All right, not terrible. Okay, that's too strong of a word. His taste in art is totally different than mine. And Roberta has an amazing art vision. She's really an artist. She's a fantastic artist. She may not be a fantastic sketch artist, but in terms of creating a game and like visualizing and storytelling, she is unbelievable. So when we started to get more people, now you got to imagine we have probably like 10 to 12 artists. So now when you have 10 to 12 people interpreting that text, that same text, then you start to get that universal image, the one that will generally match what people are going to see or in their mind.
Mm-hmm. And um, how far along is the game at this point?
We're very close. We're very close. We're towards the end of the adventure. But we
Okay.
won't put it out until it's ready.
Makes sense. Like, you know, hopefully there are no time pressures there.
Well, it's self-funded by Ken and Roberta.
Uh-huh.
So we you know they don't have to answer to anybody.
So it's just there's always the matter of, well, time does take money, but as long as there's not too much else pressure.
There's no there. It's just that it's their decision. There's
Right.
no like third party company, or there's no Lucas Arts or Sierra shareholders or Activision or Microsoft.
You don't have some big publisher saying, well, you'd better have it out before the holidays of 2022 or else you will fail.
Ken's saying that because that's his you know, the CEO mentality he has to push.
Well, yeah, but that's one person saying it, not like an entire board of directors.
Correct.
Not that he's not important.
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, that definitely happened at like latter day Sierra. Like, there were a few products that were, let's say, below par. Like, due to having to get.
Ken would say that once he left the company Sierra, there was pretty much no games got finished. It's not like his management style is impressive. You know, after reading his book, felt like I kind of had an understanding of his personality and his mindset, which I think really helped me in working with the Williamses, but in particularly with Ken.
Okay. And now you've talked a lot about collaborating with Ken and Roberta throughout this interview, but I'm wondering what's it like for the rest of the team these days? Now that you're
we have a lot of talented guys. I'm more concentrated on the marketing and business development side of things at this point. I still do some of the art, but you know, people like James and Amber and Emily and Morgan and all these different artists that have been working on the game. And in all honesty, I needed the break too, because 3D modeling something like, hey, make me a dwarf, it takes a long time. It takes a lot of hours. You have to sculpt it. You have to put the clothes on it. You have to put all the wrinkles and the hair. And then you have to make an optimized version of it that's going to run on a Quest, basically mobile graphics. And then you got to bake down that detail onto that low poly character.
Mhm.
You have to build the bone structure for the animation. Then you have to load the animation onto it. These are all things I never done before in my life. Like Roberto said, we're throwing Marcus into the ocean. He's got to swim for his life. It's pretty much what I did, and I'm very happy with it because my skill set now is night and day from where I was 2 years ago.
Okay. Well, I mean, that makes sense given what you had to do. I think it would be nigh impossible for you not to develop a skill set, having to shoulder a lot of the development work, essentially between you and Ken.
Yeah, and I mean, like the artists now, like the regions that we have are pretty much the same regions that I created. Like the art was, the main graphics were replaced, but the regions are the same. The scenes that we have, and yeah, that comes down to me, having my impact on it. A lot of stuff. Yeah, it's I'm one of the few people that did it all on the team. I did character design, I did asset design, I did environmental design. I laid out trees and forests and built out caves. But then I also did some of the programming because Ken was teaching me how to lay down the triggers, teaching me how to insert the audio. So I was learning Unity. And plus being in all the meetings and listening to the different issues, I understand about culling. I understand about, again, really optimizing. When you're designing for the Quest, you have to have like super tight graphics. So my second game that I'll make, I'm going to be so far ahead of the, understanding what to do from A to Z. Yeah. So I did all that, and then I a little bit of programming. But then I got involved in the business development, putting together the business deals, putting together the distribution deals, pulling in the talent, hiring the voice actor, all these different things, box art, and all these different things that I'm involved in, including marketing, like heavily involved in the marketing now. So I got to go to the GDC in the Unity booth and, meet the top people at Unity and everybody at the game developer conference. And then I got to go to PAX East and PAX West. And then I flew all the way to Germany and was at Gamescom at the booth at Unity. And there was only 2 games at that Unity booth. And then they spent like $250,000 on that booth. And they had 2 monitors, and one of them was dedicated to Colossal Cave, which I thought was unbelievable. And then they gave us like a room to do our meetings. I get to meet all kinds of press, from IGN to PC Gamer to the LA Times. Did you guys see the LA Times article we were in?
I did not read that particular article because, well, LA Times, like.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's like the opposite of local for any of us. But
Yeah.
I could look it up later.
Amazing article. I got to meet Todd Martine, the editor. So it was really cool. So I got that experience of being in LA just for that interview. And then now, November 1st, I'll be flying to San Francisco. And I'll be hanging out at the Unity office during their Unite event. They have on November 1st this global Unite event where all the offices of Unity gets together, and it's this massive keynote presentation. And then a few days later will be our showcase at the Day of the Devs. We're one of the few games accepted into the indie showcase that was featured at Jeff Keighley's Summerfest. So that's really cool. I'm really excited about that. And then I'll be working the booth, meeting the fans, giving them a demo of the game, giving out swag during the day of the devs. So that'll be November 5th. So like I said, I got to experience a lot of different aspects of the organization. Definitely a unique situation. I don't think there's anybody else that's done all that.
Mm-hmm.
Besides Ken and Roberta, obviously they do that, but I'm talking about like other
Right.
people on the team.
Right. And so, in terms of release platforms, this game is angling for an interesting release pattern here, as it's slated for the MetaQuest 2, apparently the Epic Game Store, and the Nintendo Switch. Like, is
That's
that correct? Okay.
That's so far what we have announced.
Okay. And I guess first is, was there any particular reason why you wanted a Nintendo Switch version of this game? Especially since I know it's not a VR only title, but the marketing has definitely been heavy on the VR aspect.
Well, yeah, I mean, I got introduced to Scott Hawkins at Nintendo, and we plugged in together at GDC. And you look at the numbers, you see 111 million Nintendo Switches sold globally, and you figure if we can get 1% sale through, that's 1.1 million sales. So why not? Am I right?
Mhm.
Like, why wouldn't you want to? And Ken and Roberta love the idea of being a family-friendly company, a family-friendly game that we're making, inspired by the old school Disney, like of the '80s. And there nothing's better than a Switch, in terms of that kind of family entertainment.
Yes, I suppose that is true enough. Yeah, and that was definitely a motif in a lot of Roberta Williams games until I'd say Phantasmagoria. Like,
Or
maybe
Colonel's Bequest also. That had some. I mean, literally, her first game was a murder mystery house. So she's
Right.
always been, she always makes fun of me a little bit, like, you're too dark, Marcus. Like, everything's like, I'm like, no, I'm not. I really am not. But I'm like, but you created Phantasmagoria. I mean, you're pretty dark too, there, Roberta.
Right. I mean, anyway, but yeah, it's like, the King's Quest games definitely had a lot of that Disney element to it, among other franchises. Like, Mixed Up Mother Goose also comes to mind.
Yeah.
But anyway, and yeah, so the Epic Games Store, any particular reason why it's ending up on that platform?
I met the Epic Games people at GDC, struck up a relationship with them, and they gave us the opportunity to have our game on Epic. So why not? We want to be available as many distribution channels as we possibly can, so that if somebody wants to buy the game, they're going to be able to buy the game.
Well, I mean, the answer there is why not Epic is some of the games are exclusive to that platform. I just mentioning that.
No, we're not exclusive to Epic.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure about that because like sometimes the games that appear on Epic's platform have a 1-year deal or something like that. So
Nope, nothing like that.
Okay.
All I'm going to say, there's a lot of stuff that we haven't announced yet.
All right. And do you see this game working in mobile format?
Oh yeah, I could see this game being on iOS and Android mobile devices. I mean, because the Quest version is a mobile version.
Okay.
It's a mobile processor, a Snapdragon processor. So the game is already super duper optimized for, the only thing we have to do is, create the touch interface.
Right. Which
So that should be fairly easy, I would think.
maybe. Like, I found with these endeavors, never say conversion X, Y, or Z is easy. Like,
Because it's always easy until it isn't.
Well,
yeah.
we already took the hardest one, which was the Quest. So,
It's
Right.
always easy till the programming department's beating down your door in the middle of the night.
No, I'm just saying that we've already tackled the hardest one. Quest was by far the hardest.
Okay, fair enough. And I'm like, I'm not sure if you can answer this particular question at this point, but
You
do
feel
you
free to
have
ask any question you want.
okay? Do you have a price set in for the game?
Yes.
Any sort of estimations here, or is that still being kept under wraps?
It's not official yet, so I don't want to mention it, but we do have a price in mind.
Okay. And any ideas beyond Colossal Cave? Like, is this going to be Cygnus one and only release, or do you plan on like continuing on?
If you're asking me that question, there's no way this is the only game. If you ask Ken and Roberta, they're gonna say that in the beginning they would be more pessimistic about things. They would be more their tone was more like, we'll see, this might be one and done. Now when they're interviewed, I think you see them talking different tone. Though they do love being retired. They loved the past 27 years of their lives traveling the world on a yacht and having a good time and doing their stuff. So part of them loves that, but also part of them loves the game design. So this is how I imagine it going down. We launch the game. They take a break. The game's a huge success. They get a phone call. Let's do King's Quest 9.
Well, I mean, if Activision is game for it, like, and I mean, they might, considering that they did allow Jane Jensen to do a remake of Gabriel Knight some years ago. But
So that's my answer.
fair enough. Fair enough.
But my goal always, it's even we don't have video, but I have the binder, and I have the picture of the adventure artwork, and I called it Project Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
And then for me it was Sierra 2.0. So my goal is to bring back Sierra to new heights.
I mean, considering the state of Sierra these days, it's not going to be hard to bring Sierra to new heights. Like,
No, I mean like back to its glory.
right. Well, we wish you luck in that endeavor, and hopefully Colossal Cave 3D, proves to be a good starting place for that.
It's what started Sierra in the first place.
Yes, it
So
did.
So it's kind of like going back to your roots and starting over again. Kind of like what I'm doing right now. I'm get back to my parents' house and starting over again.
Mm-hmm.
But this time I'm working with two of the greatest video game designers in history, and I feel very lucky.
All right. All right. So, any further questions for Marcus here?
I think I'm good.
Yes, I'm good.
All right. Well, Marcus, it was wonderful having you on the program.
Thanks for having me, guys.
No problem. No problem. maybe we'll have you on again. Either like when the game gets released or when your second project gets off the ground.
Oh, you should definitely check me out when the game is released. I'll try to sneak you guys some codes so you can review test the game, and let's.
Okay, we could do that. Right. So the game is Colossal Cave, reimagined by Roberta Williams. Currently announced for the Epic Games Store, the MetaQuest 2, and the Nintendo Switch, coming fall 2022. So be sure to look out, and also look out for any other platform announcements that might come up. So at colossalcave3d.com.
And check us out at the Day of the Devs, which is the showcase is November 3rd. There's definitely some news dropping at that time, and looking forward to showing it off.
All right. So yeah, probably too short a time in between now and our MSP show to get into a topic of discussion. We can always do that next week. So coming up on the week ahead, no Friday show this week. Sometimes that happens. A new episode of MSP is scheduled for about a half an hour from now. And coming up on the Sunday reviews, we'll be reviewing Chambers of a Devious Design, Flash Out 3, Amber City, and TV's The Awakening. So look for all that. And until next time, I shall wish you good gaming.